The globalization of textile-derived transnational corporations have heavily affected various lower economically developed countries. On the surface of things, we see how third world countries drastically increase their GDP. However, when we get an insight on the situation, it displays the clear and true winner and loser of this situation. The winner being the transnational corporation and more economically developed countries, while the losers are the less economically developed countries. In simple words, the third world countries are getting exploited for cheap labor due to minimal rules and regulations within the country regulating the laborers that make sure they are paid fairly. Furthermore, exploring and getting an insight on how this has affected the poverty rate in these third world countries. Majority of third world countries throughout the globe have seen a spike in gross domestic product by country and by capita. This is due to the increase in services and jobs provided to the population of these countries by TNCs, which has ultimately led to an increase in exports the country has made. Taking a closer look at countries that play a big role in the textile industry and compare it to some of the countries that have major benefits in third world countries in terms of having their TNCs factories be in the country while their headquarters in the first world country. For example, Bangladesh, where textiles contribute to around 20% of its entire GDP. Meanwhile, the GDP is at an all-time high. Currently, the GDP for Bangladesh as a country is 324.2 billion US dollars and 1,968 US dollars per capita. However, when taking into account a country that has some of the major clothing corporations, we get an understanding of how much money they really receive compared to Bangladesh, for example. The United States has a GDP of 20.94 trillion US dollars by country and 63,543 US dollars per capita. Inclusive to that, since 2010, the United States have gone from 15 trillion US dollars in GDP to almost 21 trillion, meaning that they have increased the GDP by 6 trillion US dollars. Whereas Bangladesh has increased their GDP by 209 billion US dollars since 2010. This goes to show that the US are clearly profiting more from third world countries than Bangladesh is profiting from first world countries. Hence the fact that Bangladesh's economy is growing much more rapidly in terms of percentile growth, however, nowhere near as much as the United States are growing in money. Furthermore, this evidently shows that third world countries are getting exploited for labor. However, TNCs are still contributing in terms of helping the economy of third world countries. The poverty rate is also an important factor that clearly demonstrates how various countries are affected by globalization. Not to mention how various countries and their poverty rate is dependent on TNCs and more specifically textile-derived TNCs. For example, when getting an insight on India's situation within the textile industry, we get an understanding that their role is very crucial, considering the fact that they account for around 37% of the world's textile exports. As you can see from the chart, India's poverty has decreased dramatically over the past 25 years, combined with taking into consideration the fact that globalization has massively increased during this time frame. This goes to show that globalization has had a massive impact on India's poverty, and not to mention the fact that the TNCs providing jobs towards the people in need, as seen in various third world countries, have definitely seen a trend in lifting the population out of poverty. However, let's not forget the fact that TNCs, for example H&M, have a huge advantage in terms of money over third world countries. H&M alone have a net worth of 18 billion US dollars. Meanwhile, India, the country that accounts for 37% of the world textile exports, make 37 billion. H&M is only one of 1,000 TNCs, which goes to show how much power textile TNCs have in these third world countries and how much of a difference they truly are able to make. Furthermore, it is evident that TNCs could make a much bigger difference in terms of lifting the population of third world countries out of poverty. If they paid the laborers a fair wage, it would lift many more people out of poverty. In conclusion, the globalization of textile-derived TNCs have heavily affected the economies of third world countries through increasing a country's GDP and lifting people out of poverty. TNCs have heavily influenced a change in many third world countries in terms of giving various opportunities towards the poor. The reoccurring problem is, however, the fact that the laborers are getting exploited for labor by the TNCs, and this trend doesn't seem to be getting better as the TNCs rapidly gain success, while the third world countries are gaining success but at a much slower rate. What I did good. Something I did well throughout this task was the fact that I created a really good and detailed action plan. The action plan was a great guidance through the entirety of this task because it made me stay organized and on task. Another aspect of the process I succeeded in was my research question because I feel like I created a clear and specific research question that was open-ended and was perfect for an essay. Inclusive to that, there was a bunch of other research already conducted on this topic and field of information, which made my pathing of research that much. What I did bad, something I could improve on for next time, is focusing on time management because, for example, I used a lot of time on creating my action plan to get it very good and thorough. Although it did help me in terms of organization, it cost me a lot of time which I could have invested into writing the actual essay. Another thing that I could have done better was make an evaluation of my research question because the process of getting to my research question took a lot of time. This was because I changed it a few times because in the start, the question was too broad and didn't have much depth. After that, I changed it to being too specific, which made it too small and not reach the word count. Finally, I made the perfect research question and was able to properly complete my essay. How I did my research. My research throughout this task was quite consistent. I didn't have any problems, mainly because all the necessary resources were already able to be found on the internet. Therefore, it wasn't a hassle getting information to answer my research question. Something I could improve on in terms of research is organizing my sources used throughout the essay because it was sometimes hard to keep track of what sources I used. But with time, I started to create a system which worked to organize my sources to complement my information.